I too have been affected by domestic violence. My mother was in 3 back-to-back abusive, physically, emotionally, verbally abusive relationships. So I basically grew up in that environment, and it didn't end. It continued way into my adulthood. And I understand why you're whispering, because he's hot. My good friend Tank. And just because we watched you be such a jerk in this movie, I'm going to clarify and say that the only thing that was akin to who he really is in real life is his talent. Darrell Tank is a very, very talented brother, but I know him as a really good guy who is a total gentleman and loves God. So there you go. But he is also the bad boy.
Wow, this is great. This is great.
So, who are you, by the way?
My name is Tank. How you doing? Did you guys enjoy the movie? Awesome movie. Super, super awesome. I apologize for my character in the movie. I was paid to do that. And that's the only reason I would ever act that way in a movie, just a movie. But, just walking in and hearing what you guys are talking about in terms of abuse, period. It's not cool. It's not cool by any means, whether it be verbal, whether it be physical, all of these things. You have to be mindful of. And the tough part about going through these things, going through any kinds of abuse, is that most time you feel like you're by yourself. And a lot of times we've gotten into this space where we just kind of mind our own business. But we kind of got to get out of that. When you see the person next to you going through something, you see the person next to you that needs a lending hand or need help holding up on any side, it's okay to reach out to that person. It's okay to be there for that person, whether they're a friend or a stranger. You never know what your smile or your kind words or what your advice can do to change someone's, not just their day, but their life. So I encourage you, whatever you see, anytime you see something going on that don't look right, say something.
I just wanted to kind of make sure that you guys know that everybody in this room has probably been touched by some sort of violence, some sort of bullying, some sort of abuse, where you walk around feeling less than. You walk around feeling like you can't speak your truth or speak up. You walk around feeling that everything is your fault and uncertain. That's abuse. So you should know that your neighbor, the person in front of you, the person behind you, we're all familiar, unfortunately. But as Tank was saying, it's really important that we know that we're not alone. Look around this room and know you're not alone.
Essence, I have a question. So, what made you vulnerable to Tank's character in the movie?
Well, my character Peaches, her role is the friend, and the friend is there, as Tank was talking about, and the friend offers no judgment, and the friend offers encouragement. And sometimes as the friend, that's all we can do until the person is really ready to acknowledge and accept our help. But the most important thing is that we know that it's not our fault. It may have been a choice, it may have been a bad choice or a wrong choice, but we can make another choice. As long as there's breath in our body, we can choose differently. And that's the important thing to know, that, you know, I know what it's like to leave all your stuff behind. My mother did that. She left in the middle of a movie, ironically. She went with her boyfriend, asked permission to go to the bathroom, ran out of the movie lobby, and kept running. So by the time she got to me, there were no clothes, no toys, no nothing. It was just what we had on our backs. And then she started again with somebody who abused her again. So this is a pattern, and this is why we're here, because we want to break that pattern. Because if you grow up in it, you're most likely to seek it, and you're most likely to attract it. So it's important that you recognize it and stop it.
He said, how do we break the cycle? And part of breaking anything is acknowledging it, understanding, being able to understand where you are. It's like Essence said, you know, sometimes a friend can only be as effective until the person realizes what that friend is trying to say and what that friend is trying to keep them away from. You know, it's tough a lot of times to be honest about where you are in your life. You know, a lot of times we try to pull the wool over the people's eyes around us, and a lot of times we probably try to pull the wool over our own eyes in hopes that if we say it's not that bad, then ultimately we'll believe it's not that bad and it won't be that bad. But the reality of it is that it is bad. And if you're caught into this cycle, and you have to really believe where you are. You have to accept where you are. I'm in a bad place in my life. I'm in a bad place in my relationship. And you have to accept that and own that. And only then can you begin to fight your way out. Only then can you identify the elements that are keeping you in this place and work from there.
I think what's very important, it's really understanding and knowing what's going on, but also as a friend, as we just did for Angie, was that she supported her, she wasn't judgmental, and she, even though after what happened, she was still there. And also for her friends back home, where, I can't remember the character's name, yeah, Marcia and Whitney were still supportive of her, and they were willing to take her back in regardless of the choices she had made previously. So that support system, even if it's not happening to you personally, is very important for the person that is going through that.
Thank you. I have one, I guess my perspective is looking at it from the standpoint of the victim. And what I want you as young people to do is to really think about who you are when you look in that mirror. That's a huge conversation that you need to have with yourself, because you're not created by accident. God put you on this planet with purpose and with value. And so when you understand purpose and value, we see from the movie, it wasn't until that young lady understood her purpose and her value that she was able to step away from the abusive situation. So when we talk about how do we break that cycle, it's really knowing who you are, what God has created you for, what your value is, and then you know, I deserve more than that, and nobody can tell me that I can accept, that I should be accepting something less than what I deserve.
Personally, I did not struggle with any violence relationships in high school, but I do think that it's a reality for a lot of young women and young men at my age to go through those sort of things. And I think that first you have to recognize that any violence isn't the fault of the victim, ever. And then also to avoid situations like that, it's important to set boundaries for yourself. And that way you can avoid situations that make you feel uncomfortable or that can potentially be dangerous for you if before you enter a relationship, before you enter friendships, or even with your own family, to understand what is okay and what is not okay previous to entering any situation that might be questionable.
It was funny how when I was sitting way in the back because I'm old and I need to be able to see the screen. So I was in the back and I just kind of was listening to the response that you all gave when Tank's character was crying the first time. You guys remember that? Yeah, you guys are like, what in the heck is this dude doing? The reality is just this. We have a perspective that men are not supposed to cry, they're not supposed to feel, and all those things are weak aspects of their character. Well, what happens is that from there, we develop this whole hyper-masculinity, and then we begin to think that we are supposed to do things just because we are men, things that are foul, things that we saw, again, portrayed in the movie. And so I think one of the ways we address it is to begin to really understand what God has said, and I'm going to continue to go there because that's my truth. What God has said about who a man is, what God has said about what love really means, and then our responsibility as men to really protect and guard and husband over and love and provide for young ladies, whether they're our wives or our sisters. And once we understand that, then I think that whole issue around what masculinity is defined by Scripture as opposed to being defined by the culture.
Amen. You better come on. Come on. Hallelujah in here. That's right. Won't he do it? Just to add to that, for me growing up, I had a different kind of example. You know what I mean? And you have to be careful what examples you're looking to. You have to be careful that you're not looking to Instagram and looking to your favorite music video and looking to these other things that aren't giving you true examples of what a real man is supposed to be. My great-grandfather, just to give you a very short story, he had a 6th grade education. He worked at the leather mill downtown. He had about a half an inch of dead skin on his hands. So he would check chicken grease with his fingers to see if it was hot enough to put the chicken in. This was a real hard-working man. That was Big Daddy. When Big Daddy came home, everybody be quiet because Big Daddy home, right? And so what Big Daddy would do, when Big Daddy would get his checks every Friday, he would take out just enough money to buy hot dogs and hamburgers so he could cook on the grill for all of us. And he would give the rest of the money to Big Mama and let her take care of everything she had to take care of. And when Big Daddy passed, one of the saddest days ever, I then realized what he was doing. When Big Daddy passed, Big Ma didn't have to worry about nothing. Her house was paid for, the cars were paid for, every bill was paid up for years in advance, and it opened my eyes to something like, okay, a man is supposed to take care of his responsibilities, whatever they are. That's what a real man is, and it's facing it head on. And that was my example. That has been my example. I don't know what's going on right now where men feel like you're some type of sucker or some type of anything else because you cater to a woman, but that's what it's supposed to be. That's the natural order of things. We're supposed to take care of our kids, we're supposed to be the head of our household, and we are supposed to take care of our women. If your example is not leading you in that direction, that is the wrong example, I promise you, and you won't get far with that one.
So before we get into questions, I just want to echo what the gentlemen were saying up here. I mean, society has given us a false perception of what manhood is, and I'm just talking to the gentlemen, in the crowd today. Our young men are hypersexualized. They look to violence. It's in the music, it's in the media, it's on TV, everywhere you look. And I see a lot of young men, especially the ones that I work with, they assign value to their manhood by how much money they make, what kind of car they drive, and like we saw in the movie, how many women that they conquer, so to speak. I just want to let everyone know that's a false perception. And like everyone is saying up here, being a real man is being a provider, taking care of business, taking care of home, taking care of your family. So I just wanted to say that before we get into the Q&A.
We keep talking about men and what their roles are, and I know Hallie talked earlier about helpmates. But I want to kind of highlight the fact that we touched upon when Angie's character finally realized her value and her worth, the abuse she walked away from. I just want to reiterate, I read something the other day that really hit my soul in such a huge way. And it said, teach your daughters to know they're beautiful without the compliment or the mirror. And I think that's really important, ladies, that we know that we're beautiful, that we don't have to look like anybody else, we don't have to be like anybody else, we don't have to say or do like anybody else. Our own uniqueness, our own swag, our own style, our own mind is enough, and it's beautiful. So really, really, really know that, and pick, you know, the men were talking about their examples and the people that they modeled themselves after. I just think it's really important because we are so, we gravitate so much to relationships as women and to circles of girlfriends. Make sure that your circles of girlfriends are encouraging, not just to you, but to the strangers in the street, because it's like that poem that Jay was talking about, where it's like, how are you gonna talk bad about me and then say black is beautiful? And I see this a lot on social media. Like, I see people saying really nasty stuff, and then I look at their profile and they're like, God lover, and I'm like, whoa, 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 where's the disconnect? So let's make sure that the women and the young friends of ours and the young ladies that we're around and that we're gravitating towards are lifting each other up. Know you're beautiful without the compliment or the mirror.
Well, and I think that's the point, is that whether you realize it or not, by you not saying anything, by you just standing around, it's already affecting you. Whether you realize it or not, that pressure or whatever that person is going through, that energy, it's increasing throughout whatever place we're in. So what happens is that you reverse that energy by saying something. Because when you say something, then the person next to you that thought about saying something that wasn't going to say anything, now that you said something, you know what? Now they're going to say something. And then the person right down the hall is going, you know what? That's not right. We should all. And so that's the thing that we're trying to ignite. That's the energy that we're trying to push out and become more contagious than the other energy, the negative energy. And that's what that is, and joining together and not just standing around and waiting. Like, we're just waiting. We're just waiting for the bad thing to happen so then we can really rise up and possibly say something about it. But how about making sure something bad doesn't happen? You know what I mean? We always talk about security, and you know, you always oftentimes see security when they're in scuffles and fighting the bad guys and all those things. But the best security is prevention. And when people see the bullies or whoever these people are, when they see that there are enough people that aren't going to stand for it, they'll stop. That prevents them from even getting started. And so that's why I say, speak up. Everybody speak up for everybody.
Also, it's good to keep in mind that sometimes disrupting abuse can be harmful to the person that is disrupting it. So make sure that whenever you're saying something that you don't think is right, that you're also safe in that situation. And also that disrupting abuse doesn't have to be a head-on thing to the abuser. You can go by supporting the victim, which is a safer way to go, I would say, as well.
And, you know, we can always, again, offer a safe place, you know. Sometimes you're right. It is, I mean, I remember the last night that I actually ever spent in my mother's house, there was a fight going on upstairs, an argument, and I was kind of numb to it, because when you grow up in it, you get a little numb to it, so you think. And I was watching TV in the kitchen, and the next thing you know, my mother was at the bottom of the stairs. And I leaned back and I looked, and I said, "Did you fall?" And she said, "No, he pushed me." So I went to the phone to call 911, and then she came and freaked out on me for attempting to call the police. So we understand that it's not as black and white sometimes in terms of helping someone, and she wasn't ready to leave, she wasn't ready for help, but I left. I left because I was done. So you can also take a stand for yourself and remember that there are places and people, and that's what we're talking about more than anything. I think Tank and Blair and all of us are really advocating for you to be a support system, for us to realize that as a community, we have a responsibility to offer support. And sometimes that support is a phone call, sometimes that support is saying something, sometimes that support is just being a friend and not being judgmental and being there when the person is done and ready to leave. And sometimes it's actually a little bit more inconvenient than that. Sometimes it's actually offering somebody a place to stay, or a couch to sleep on, or some clothes that belong to your little sister that she can't fit in anymore, and take it to a shelter where there's victims of domestic violence. There's always something we can do, and as a young people, there's always something you can do. I know you got shoes in your closet that you don't wear. I know you got clothes that you don't like, that you got for Christmas from some aunt who doesn't know your size. So boo, go to the shelter and drop that stuff off, because people can need it and they can use it, all right? So there's always something we can do. There's no bruise or black eye. I think a lot of people are in emotionally abusive relationships, and it's a lot harder to prove, and it's a lot more insidious. And I think that a lot of people stay in relationships because they don't get the support of the recognition of, like, this person just makes me feel like shit about myself. Yeah, sorry, but you know, y'all have heard that word before. It's actually on TV. So yeah, this person makes me feel bad about myself. This person makes me feel like I can't speak my mind or talk about my feelings or talk about my truth or talk about my dreams without them crushing it. That's abusive. That's not a relationship you should be in. And a lot of times, as we saw in the film, it starts with emotional abuse. You know, it starts with somebody undercutting you. First they build you up, you're amazing, you're da-da-da-da, and then go fix your hair. You know, you don't look, I don't like that outfit or whatever. But if you start to feel unsafe, listen to that. That's true. That's your soul speaking to you. That's not your imagination. And I know that it's harder, again, to kind of say, oh, I'm being abused, because there's no outward sign of it. But if you feel unsafe and if you don't feel good and if you don't feel supported and if you don't feel loved, then trust that and get out. Get out.